Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. It is Chris here with Ben, here for Milton for our weekly Star Wars podcast, Outer Rim Transmission. This is episode 196. Today, we are talking about not only the season 2 finale, but the series finale for Andor, the spin-off of Rogue One. It's the end of an era. So much to talk about in so much little time. But we're going to do our best here, and it will not be the last time we talk about Andor. As the other things that come up, evergreen content, we'll talk about it from time to time here on the podcast. But I'm going to throw it over to Milton. How's it going, man?
I'm good, man. It's good to be back on the podcast. I'm excited to talk about these episodes. This finale was worth it. I'm excited, and I'm glad how they paid it off. And yeah, it's finally nice to have something that feels really, really like Star Wars.
There we go. There we go. I know, Ben, you're always on harping about the feel of Star Wars, so I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah. I mean, I can agree with Milton. Like, it finally. Hey, it took us 18 episodes, but the last 6 actually felt like Star Wars. So I can give props where they're due, and it was a really nice way they ended things. So I was happy about that, and we'll dive into all that. And I guess speaking of diving into things, I guess I'll dive into my weekend Star Wars to start things off. So I have a few things, so I'll have a backlog of weeks in Star Wars for us, but this week was a really special week. So I know Milton was checking out a little bit of Light and Magic earlier in the week. And I actually had kind of like my own version of Light and Magic I was dealing with earlier in the week. So on Tuesday night before Andor came out, one of my other Star Wars YouTube friends, Star Wars Gazer, he just pretty much does live streams, and that's his main thing. Anyways, he was interviewing like one of George Lucas's like main people. Like George is referred to Roger Christian as like in his circle of like 4 or 5 most important people, on the original movie. And Star Wars Gazer was interviewing Roger Christian, and he's the original set designer and prop designer for the original movie, and then he was the second director for Return of the Jedi and Phantom Menace. And it was really cool because Tuesday night we actually did a watch party with Roger Christian. And it was great because, like, since Gazer only has, like, 300 subscribers, Roger Christian was able to, like, answer any questions. So, like, I was talking, I kept just sending in questions for him. And I was, like, talking to, like, one of George Lucas's, like, main people from the original movie. And it was so cool, like, hearing him answer about the props and, like, his main claim to fame is, he was the one who came up with the original design for the lightsaber prop, for what it could even look like.
Wow.
So that's like his main thing. Like, he did all the prop design, set design for the original movie, but like his main, like claim to fame, like I mentioned, it was, he's the one that designed, Obi-Wan's lightsaber, Vader's lightsaber, etc. So yeah, it was like him talking about that. And we did a watch party of A New Hope on Tuesday night, and it literally felt like Light and Magic because like, Gazer just asked him questions, and then Roger would talk for like 10 minutes straight about this scene or that scene. Like, he was pointing out all kinds of little tidbits you would never have thought of. Like, I sent it in our group chat. Outside the cantina, there's that crashed spaceship.
Yep.
And he actually said the story behind that is, people don't imagine it, but it's like a desert area in Tunisia. And outside that building, it's a huge olive tree. And like over there, like stuff like that's considered like sacred and whatever. So like they can't just tear it down for a movie. So what they had to do was he helped design a huge spaceship like drapage to put over the whole tree.
No way.
And that's where that came from actually.
What?
So like, and he said you can't tell at all. And then he said when they finished up, they took the drapage down and there's a huge tree there. So, it was really cool just like getting little tidbits of inside info like that. Like even, here's a fun fact, a fun little Easter egg. So like, when 3PO picks up the comm in the Death Star?
Yep.
Well, that comm, he actually improv designed it on the spot. Like when he went up, because he said that scene wasn't originally in the first draft. And when he went up to like one of the other producers' offices, they were talking about it, and he was bringing up a different prop, and like they were like, hey, George called, he needs a comm for 3PO and the stormtroopers. And Roger said, he was carrying a bunch of stuff from like a drain pipe up, and he's like, wait a second, this looks like a sci-fi fantasy type of little thing. And he said, you know what, this will be our comm. And he took it down to George, and George liked it and said, okay, dress it up like it's a comm, like put a couple rubber things on it and it'll be good to go. And it was from a drain pipe, actually. So
oh my God.
He was telling us all kinds of like little inside info, things like that. And like I said, it felt like a live action light magic. It was so cool, like talking to that guy.
I can't believe I've never heard of the guy before. Milton, have you ever heard of this guy involved with Star Wars?
You said he was from what?
He was so Roger Christian was the original set designer and lead prop guy, and his like claim to fame was he designed the design of the lightsaber.
I think you said he was part of Phantom Menace, right?
Yep, Phantom Menace. He was New Hope
documentary. I think he was in the first Phantom Menace documentary as like one of the directors. I think I remember him.
Yep, he was the second director on Phantom Menace, Return of the Jedi, and then he was the head of props and set design on the very first Star Wars. So it was awesome, like hearing it, and like George even wrote the foreword for his book and stuff. He said so, like that was real special to him, and he's still in contact with George to this day because, like he said, George did an interview with Nolan on YouTube before at like a convention or whatever, and he pointed out Roger Christian was one of his only 3 or 4 people in his whole circle back then who actually supported him on A New Hope, and like he'll be like forever grateful for like Roger like supporting him and like all this stuff. So it was cool just like interacting with someone that was like so important to George and so important to that original movie.
Wow, that's crazy. I've never been able to interact with somebody like that through Twitter or maybe Twitter. I mean, like live chat. That's something cool because a lot of these old heads, I feel like they don't maybe want to do like the online interviews probably because a lot of them just aren't like savvy enough, unfortunately, because they're from another generation. You know what I mean?
Here's the funny thing.
Badly, I'm not saying everybody's like that, but I know my parents are like that.
Here's the funny thing with this guy. He said, it took us about 20 minutes to get it going because he had to do a couple resets of his Disney Plus password to get logged in. So it was funny, but it was really cool. Like I said, he was answering my questions. Like I asked him, what was the hardest prop to design for him to figure out like how to make it work, and he said by far the hardest was R2-D2 just because of the logistics of building that thing for Kenny Baker. And he like talked about how when R2's head blows up, like that was actually an accident when they first did that. Like they didn't mean to do that, and like like the circuits overloaded and stuff or whatever. It heated up because it was so hot, and it overloaded and just blew up. And they had caught that on camera, and like that's how that came to be. So like he said they had that, and then here's another funny one, guys. Like he mentioned, so like the Jawa Sandcrawler, when they built that setup, so since it was right on the border of Tunisia and whatever the other country is next to it, and since like some of the like the boxes and things said Star Wars on them or whatever, some of basically the border patrol came by and was like, why is this saying war? And like he said George and himself and then a few of the other crew members that were there like setting up and looking over some of the Sandcrawler sets, they had to like calm these guys down because a bunch of border people were like, whoa, is this some mass weapon basically?
Oh my
like
gosh.
What is this? Yeah, and he said they were like getting like pretty mad because they thought it was something like hostile. And they were like, no, we're from America, all this stuff, we have these filming permits, yada yada yada, like all this stuff. And he said, they were ready to like kick him out of the country because like they thought it was something like hostile.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so like it was just cool like hearing those types of inside stories. And he talked about like with the X-Wing, the only X-Wing, they only built one X-Wing and they just kept rotating the pilots and kept letting them do their takes and everything. Just all kinds of little insider pieces of information. And he said Harrison Ford was always like his best friend out of all the actors on the set, just because like he could always go to Harrison and be like, hey, you got to like push George for this or push George for that or whatever, or like, because even though I'm just the set designer, like he'll listen to you because you're the actor and stuff. So it was really cool hearing all his stories.
Oh my gosh, that sounds awesome. Will viewers of our podcast be able to go back and watch that somewhere on like a replay?
Yeah, it's on so Star Wars Gazer is the YouTube name. It's just Star Wars and then GAZER. And just go back to last Tuesday, whatever date that would be. He keeps all his live streams up. So he did that stream and it's up there, and literally once you get past like the first 20 minutes of Roger like figuring out his Disney Plus and stuff, it just gets into the flow of it where it literally is just like a full-blown podcast where like Gazer was just asking him questions, and then he'd talk for literally like 10 minutes straight and just tell stories about George or stuff on set and all these things. And like one of his big things he said back then, since he was so young, some of the older people on set, some of the older producers, like he said the director of photography for that movie specifically always treated him like pretty badly because he was in his mid to late 20s, and they hated the idea of like a mid to late 20-year-old controlling the set design and prop design for a movie. So he said there was always like struggles with that and stuff, but yeah, it was just really cool like interacting and talking with someone like that for literally like 3 hours straight.
Oh wow, it's that long, huh? That's amazing.
Yeah, it was literally 3 hours because it was the first 20 minutes, and then we watched the entire first movie.
Oh man, that's a lot of content. Cool. That's a lot of content. Back to you, Milton. Back to you. So, do you have any Star Wars things that happened in the last 7 days that you want to mention or talk about? I got nothing. I think Ben spoke for the two of us, but I'm going to throw it over to you.
Yeah, how about that? I guess we'll talk about. I guess the ILM documentary. I did finish season 2.
You know what? We're gonna spend a whole episode because guess what, guys? Yeah. We have like nothing to talk about for a year. Let's do Star Wars, so we can parse this stuff out for a year now.
Yeah, I'm about to say we can get into that in another episode, but that's probably the only other Star Wars thing I've done is catch up on that documentary for season 2, and we can talk about that another day.
Oh yeah, for sure. I watched it as well, enjoyed it. My week in Star Wars, I'll just condense it because it has to do with something that came out this week. So speaking of that, segueing into out this week, we had a single Star Wars comic from Marvel. That was Jedi Knights #3. You can see my review and see our discussion over on the Star Wars Underworld podcast, Tractor Beam, this past Wednesday. Me and Matthew broke it down. But we also have a big one. What is the only Star Wars video game, to my knowledge, that's out this year in the year of 2025. Star Wars Outlaws had its final expansion, one of two expansions. The other one was called Wild Card with Lando Calrissian. This one's called A Pirate's Price, and it deals all with Hondo Ohnaka. And it feels so much like Skeleton Crew. It's all about a treasure. In fact, I found a data pad that actually referenced AT-AT. So there's a lot of really cool stuff like that. I found a data pad that referenced Ochia Bastoon. A lot of little cool Easter eggs are, kind of sprinkled in, but it's a really cool adventure. It's like a 3.5 hour experience. So for $20, I think it's worth it because it actually does add a lot to the game. It adds like different, a new ship you could fly, which almost looks like the B-Wing, where you can like have different attack positions, and you do a couple missions with that. It opens up a whole new sector of space that we've never seen in Star Wars. That it's a whole new little solar system. It has like a new faction of a crime syndicate that you can actually earn reputation with. And Hondo Ohnaka, oh my gosh, the voice acting is incredible. I mean, this guy just never lets up, even for a video game. He's given it his all. So absolutely loved it. And it's just perfect Hondo storytelling. Like, he's like, oh, I forgot to tell you about that. It's like, you could have told me that thing was going to try to kill me, dude. It's like, oh, yeah, that thing I left behind. Like, it was just so funny. And you're globe-trotting around the galaxy. You go back to Tatooine, to one of his old hideouts to retrieve an item. and then you're going to Kijimi to deliver something to Crimson Dawn while being chased by the Pike Syndicate. So it's everything that's good about Star Wars Outlaws, like all this cool traversal, different vehicles, different planets. It's even got like new weapons for this new faction and stuff like that. And there's even like a choose your own ending kind of thing at the end of the game, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, this is pretty much going to be Kay Vess's last outing in Star Wars for now. Definitely, I don't consider them ever doing another one of these games because it's did poorly with the sales. But maybe we'll get her in a comic. Maybe we'll get her in an animated series at some point or something. Lucasfilm will pull these characters into other mediums, no problem. But yeah, really enjoyed my time with that. That came out over on Sunday or Thursday. Today's Sunday. Thursday. That's basically about it. So we're going to get into what everybody clicked on probably this video for, which is Andor Season 2, the finale. The finale is basically 3 episodes. Like the rest of Season 2 is released in 3 episode arcs or chunks. We have Episode 10, Make It Stop. Episode 11, Who Else Knows? And Episode 12, Jedha, Kyber, Erso. I'm going to throw it over to Ben to give us your initial impressions. How's it going? Let's hear what you have to say about these final episodes.
Yeah, I would say they're good. It was a good solid ending for the season, I think. I would say it was a good ending for the season, and it was a good ending for the series as a whole, just because it was a nice payoff. Like, I think the way they ended the third episode was very nice, and just overall, I think, like Milton said in his opening intro, like it felt like Star Wars for these 3 episodes, and I really do believe, like, and it's not me just like dogging on the rest of the series. Like if the rest of the series felt like these 3 episodes or even the last 3, this series would easily be in my top 3 favorite probably Star Wars shows, honestly. So it's just it's just a matter of execution, and like they did a really good job keeping the story tight, staying on track, giving us a good backstory, a bit about Luthen, and I really think they did a nice job of wrapping everything together for all the characters, even on the on the Empire and the Imperial side as well. Like I really do think they did a good job with the way they did things. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I'll be reflecting a lot of those similar thoughts, but I'll throw it to Milton first on your initial reactions to the episode. After you finished watching them, what were you feeling after you finished that final scene of episode 12?
Right. No, I really enjoyed it. I watched it whatever it was, a Wednesday or Thursday morning, whenever I was able to at least, I think I finished it later that day. It was one of those days. But anyways, my feeling about it was enthusiastic. It was fun. I was very excited. I felt never bored with it. I thought it hit the nail on the head with how they portrayed everyone and how it led up into Rogue One. I mean, to me, it was a perfect way they introduced the Rogue One film. And I actually went back to watch that later that evening to see how it lined up, and it felt great. It didn't feel out of place. I felt those last 3 episodes really made Rogue One even stronger as a film, and that's one of my favorite Star Wars movies. But those 3 episodes are honestly the last 6 episodes of Rogue One, I think, of Andor, strengthened Rogue One, in my opinion. Overall, I felt that Tony Gilroy made everyone look good. He paid off every character. It made total sense in a linear storytelling of what Rogue One led to and what Rogue One led into New Hope. So I was very pleased. I was satisfied. I was never bored, and I was very enthused about it. And I felt that they paid it off well.
Oh man, yeah, I'm so happy that you were able to watch Rogue One, because I actually watched it last night. We're gonna save that topic for like the same discussion tonight, but a little bit later on, because I definitely want to spend time talking specifically about how we felt about transition from that series to the film. We're going to talk about that, but for now we're going to talk about the 3 episodes themselves. Then we'll talk about like the series as a whole, Rogue One connections, and all that good stuff. But yeah, I mean, after that finale, I also mimic you with saying enthusiasm. You know, we watch all the Star Wars here, right? That's what we do on the channel. But and you could find you know, when you're watching all this Star Wars as much as we watch it, sometimes it just kind of washes over us, and we're like, cool, that was a good Star Wars story. We've seen a lot of good Star Wars stories. But every once in a while, Mandalorian season 2 finale, for instance, there's certain Star Wars moments where you go, oh my gosh, that was exceptional, or wow, this has me thinking a lot more about Star Wars. I'll be honest with you guys, I've thought about this finale every day since I've watched it almost a week ago. Well, 5 days ago, I guess at this point. You know, it takes a certain kind of Star Wars to leave its mark on me, to constantly think about it every day, you know, speaking with coworkers or even just working and just, you know, thinking about like, oh yeah, that was a cool moment. I can't wait to watch that again or whatever. But yeah, exactly like guys were saying. The one thing I will add in my first impressions here is a sense of urgency I felt, which was that intensity of, oh my gosh, like that's the best part about this thing. It's like, we know how this story ends, but for some reason I'm still like on the edge of my seat going, oh my gosh, like I forget that Rogue One and Star Wars New Hope exist for a moment because I'm so engaged with this story that I'm like, are they going to make it out? Of course they're going to make it out. But how is that going to happen? There's still characters like Clea involved. What's her fate? What's Luthen's fate? And none of that stuff was predictable. The stuff that happens with Luthen, the stuff that happens with these other side characters, completely threw me off. And I'm so happy to say that I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't predict anything, which is always fun. Going into these experiences for the first time, not being spoiled, just letting it wash over us and go, whoa, that was such an impactful, awesome story. So yeah, I very much mimic what you guys say. But I think we'll just start off with just talking about this whole idea. What were your guys like the through line through these 3 episodes is, oh my gosh, like they this is how they get the rebels get the information about what the heck this weapon is even doing, right? So throw it back to you, Ben. What was your thought on how they handled this entire plot point of, oh man, Lonnie gave the information to Luthen is giving that information to Clea, Andor has to pick her up, and then they have to get it back to Yavin. What did you think of like the whole plot sequence there?
I thought that whole sequence was good because the thing is with me, I was wondering, you know, as we were progressing into these episodes, I was like, okay, you know, we got some stuff to do in these final 3 episodes, and like, you know, 2.5, 3 hours, like it's a lot of time, but it's not a lot of time, like, you know. So I was wondering how they were going to do it, and they did a good job, you know, connecting and like getting the message back, basically, you know. So I really liked the way they did it with that, with Lonnie and Luthen and everybody. And I thought it was done well. Like you mentioned, it I think that's the biggest part of these episodes for me, was even though you knew where the characters were going, like the stakes actually felt real. Like, oh my gosh, is like Luthen gonna actually get this info? Is like Clea and Cassian gonna get caught? Is, you know, et cetera, like, you know, all these things. It's like, I think that's the big thing for me, is like the urgency and pacing felt so well with that. Like it felt urgent. Like you have to get this info about the Death Star back. Like it can't get lost. So I really thought they did a good job of making the urgency feel real when they were, you know, pushing that information along down the line.
Yeah, a big part of the urgency and the information is, again, going from the perspective of Clea. And I always really liked this character going back from the beginning of the series. Just really didn't know about her. We just knew she was very determined, very cunning, and just pretty much kept Luthen in line, which seemed difficult to do with how that guy is. But I didn't even think going into these episodes, again, surprised to see flashbacks and see how impactful important these flashbacks are, Milton. So what were your thoughts on just like the sprinkling of these flashbacks going through the story as we're seeing in real time what Clea is dealing with, Luthen being there and everything?
Yeah, I didn't expect the flashbacks. I thought that was a really strong suit of the episodes. excuse me. Yeah, I thought these flashbacks were really, really strong. I did not see Luthen as an Imperial, like stormtrooper or militia type guy. But now that this all makes sense with why he's the way he is, in the sense of his ability to blend in, how he knows how the Empire thinks, his ability to be a leader, how he knows how to manipulate. It all made sense, and I was like, okay, this is a great way to tell his backstory. And I overall felt that Luthen's storyline or narrative of where we saw him from season 1 to his ending was, honestly, looking back on it and reflecting it, was perfectly well done. I mean, he was a very complicated man. He was someone that really believed in something, but he was also trying to make up for all the stuff that he clearly felt bad for doing. He clearly was someone that lost his way and realized that he was on the wrong side and decided to do something different about it. And that's what I appreciated about the flashbacks. And we got to see that growth.
Yeah, actually, this is dawning on me. This is, if I could put it a weak point in the show, this was it. That's new information. What was that explicitly revealed that he was an Imperial? I thought he was like just some like guy part of a gang or something. I mean, he wasn't.
I was thinking.
I don't know like what he was actually doing, and that's my one gripe. Because then apparently I read in something from StarWars.com like that he killed Clea's parents or something. I didn't pick that up, so I don't know. Go ahead, Ben.
I was kind of in the same boat as Milton. I was thinking it was kind of implied that he was an Imperial. I honestly was thinking that too.
Because I thought like whenever what's her name, Dedra brings that piece that was broken, that's is what I went back to. Oh, he destroyed that on the ship, and that's what, and then she figured out who it was. So I assumed it was, because she said that's an Imperial like drive or something, or whatever, that rare or whatever. I'm thinking, oh, he must have broken that. He must have destroyed that.
No, okay, so that's a Star Path drive. So that was what Andor got in like the first episode. It was never actually shown that he got it. And that was like, this is why the show is so brilliant, because they pulled this thing all the way back from the first couple episodes. That was the thing that Cassian got back, and that was his like bargaining chip to give to Luthen. Bix called Luthen to Ferrix. They gave him, he was going to give him that, and he didn't care about that. He's like, I'm actually here for you. And then they left it behind. Cassian tried to get it, but like the Morlana 1 soldiers were like coming in with, what's his name? Cyril Karn. So he left that behind. It shows it in this one frame. It shows it like left behind. And it comes back full circle from Dedra finding this thing. See that? But I mean, he could still be an Imperial. I'm going to have to watch that scene over again. Like maybe he just has a different kind of outfit that I'm not used to seeing as an Imperial or something.
Yeah, it was very much like a militia type.
Yeah.
Thing. They were like, I don't not say special forces, but like Army Ranger type. So I'm thinking
that's what I was thinking
of the Imperial, because like the way they were talking, I'm thinking, oh, this is very much Imperial occupation. But again, I could be completely wrong.
Yeah. So go ahead, Ben.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think one thing that we definitely should bring up, since we're on the first episode, is I really want to give them props for addressing more of the K2 and casting stuff. I'm not sure if this was on your notes tonight, Chris, for this breakdown. Yeah. But I was going to say, I have to bring this up because that was one of the big eyebrow raises, like, you know, from like the old comic and everything. It's like, all right, why is this dude so attached to this droid if they just met like a day ago or whatever it was? So like, I'm glad they addressed a bit of it in this, where, you know, since time has passed since the last arc, you know, they actually have them like playing games and showing them bonding, all that stuff. Like, I thought that was, even though this was the finale, I thought that was very, very valuable screen time, because honestly, if we would have made it through the finale and say you cut those scenes out, I would have been critical and been like, okay, yeah, we didn't show any of their relationship at all. So I had to make sure we highlight that on this breakdown tonight, because I thought that was a very, very important part of K2 and Cassian's you know, bonding building that we needed on screen, quite frankly.
I talk every week here about what was that year gap like for between the last episodes we watched, and it's clearly evident that these guys are inseparable. You see them playing cards, and I love how Melshi is such a big part of this. Melshi is a great character that has a couple lines and a couple scenes in Rogue One, but it is cool to see these guys having like a bachelor pad now. Like essentially it's just like the three of them just hanging out. They go on, they've been playing 800 games, so apparently they haven't been doing too much, is my assumption. They've been lying low, because then they make a big deal about them going off of Yavin. And I think that's really, really cool too, is like, we know that the rebels can't be going all over the place, because if one of them gets captured by the Imperials, they're going to interrogate them and find the location of Yavin. So like all these, I like how meticulously like they wrote this story where it's like, okay, they get a lot of flack for leaving the place. It's not, nobody should be doing that yet, right? This is a point where there shouldn't be a big battle between these different factions, because that can't really happen until the Battle of Scarif. So, yeah, there's a lot going on there. But again, just things I've been saying every week. The human story of Andor is really where this hits home for me. Is like, okay, this is a little bit different storytelling. But as we're saying here, these last 6 episodes, because of the human story, these 6 episodes, even though we know the fates for like half these characters, we're still saying like, oh my gosh, this is engaging. We're so thrilled to see what's happening before our eyes. You know what I mean? So going over to the other side of things, what were your thoughts about that really intense scene with Dedra Meero and director Orson Krennic, played by Ben Mendelsohn?
Loved it. It was everything Krennic. Listen, Ben Mendelsohn, he is Krennic. I don't see anyone else playing him. He's really just solidified himself as the character. But I love that scene because I would say that was pure, confident Krennic who was like, I'm in control of everything. You're not going to screw me over with this project. Vader and Tarkin hasn't really stepped to him yet. So you can see like this is the most confident he's been. So it was nice to see him and how he put his finger on her head.
Yep.
That I was like, whoa. I was like, what the hell is that? But I was loving every minute of it. It was a great scene, and you can tell that Dedra was like, she was worried.
Apparently, Ben Mendelsohn improvised that scene where he put the finger on her head. I thought that was just so crazy. Like, you're right. I reacted the same way. I'm like, oh shoot, like what's happening here? Oh right. Man. And just go ahead, Ben.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with you guys. I think that was one of the best scenes of this entire thing. Especially, I like the fact just how he like made her say it. When he was talking about the Death Star, and he like made her basically telling herself about all this stuff. Like just his acting, I don't know. It was so intense because with her character not being in the original trilogy, obviously, or even in Rogue One for that matter. There was a moment there I'm like, man, this could be the scene where she gets taken out. Like, he might just straight up kill her. Because, Krennic, it's Imperial officers, you never know what could happen with these characters. And Krennic is a ruthless character, so, I was like, man, this is progressing, who knows? But yeah, it was a really good, intense scene, and, like you said, Milton, it really solidified Ben Mendelsohn as a really good villain.
Yeah.
And just the idea that because of Dedra Meero, the rebellion gets to live on. Because of her mistakes and Milton, maybe you can clear me up on this a little bit too. As far as her looking in places she shouldn't be looking, is that because she was looking into the Gorman massacre and trying to figure out what she was looking into the energy efficiency thing, and she somehow stumbled upon Death Star files? Is that basically what happened, or something else?
She was looking around and she was accidentally CC'd on things that she shouldn't have been seeing. So someone was sending her by accident reports of the energy project and the Death Star, but she read some of it, she said, but didn't really dive into it, but knew about it, but didn't want to report it. And so because when she's yeah, they were accidentally brought across my desk, I should have reported it, but I didn't. Because she was trying to look for access, and it's I see why she didn't say anything, but also too that's what screwed her, because now people think you can't be trusted because Supervisor Young had your password, so that makes you think, oh, you were passing along information to him the whole time. But it was crazy. So it was kind of like unfortunate circumstances for her to how things played out, but that's part of the game of being in that type of like hierarchy of like that type of organization, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Dedramir's drive from day one. She's been looking for Axis. So even though she was technically like thrown off of that project, she still has like that year time in between Gorman Massacre and this, where it's like, all right, she's trying to get down to business, trying to figure this out because she's just like her underling that used to work with her. I forgot his name. He gets killed by K2SO, but he's like, all right, I'm gonna get back at him. So it's like all these like self kind of determinated thing that she's doing is just like throwing that into the equation. All this, it's just so fun to look back and like there's so many connections that drag us back to A New Hope here, and it goes all the way back to Dedra and her obsession with Axis that is basically almost like the downfall of the Empire.
Right, and that's the thing. Like her intentions were pure. Like that's the thing. It wasn't she was out here trying to be sneaky or cagey in the sense of trying to screw the Empire. She was very loyal. Like I think obviously if she could prove that, then great. But she just got caught up in something that she shouldn't have been seeing, and that's just the collateral damage that she has to deal with, unfortunately.
Yeah, Ben, there's just so many scenes, like so many iconic scenes in these 3 episodes. The scene that I did not expect, but just loved when it happened was when Dedra arrives at the art gallery, and Luthen Rael is there to meet her, and that's like the second time we see her smiling, like she's playing this pleasant Imperial officer, and then she casually takes out the Star Path, and then things get really hot really fast as far as, oh crap, he's screwed. He is so screwed. So what was your reaction to that point?
Yeah, that whole sequence, I didn't know where it was going to go because I didn't know, if it was going to be he was going to say the heck with it and just go out in a blaze of glory like a shootout with the Imperials that were there or something or what. Because, with his character, I could have easily seen him going out like that. Like that whole sequence, that build up to it. Like I just really thought it was well done, and it was a good payoff for both of those characters, like building to their big meeting like this basically, and then him trying to like basically take himself out. Like that was intense because I was like, man, what's gonna happen here? Because you knew like even though this show's had deaths and stuff before, like I just knew he wasn't gonna go out like that, So I was like, all right, is he gonna get caught? But if he gets caught, how's he gonna get out of it? Because would he get tortured or whatever, and he'd squeal. So like I was really interested to see what would happen, or how it played out, and I just thought they did a good job of building like the suspense of that moment with her and him, just the whole conversation they had, and it was like a good payoff kind of for her character for finally finding him, and they pulled pretty much the same line. I think Cassian or Luthen or someone said it in the earlier in season 1. She basically mirrored the line when she said, you've been right here, like under the Imperials' noses, and like that whole like thing, that whole monologue that she gave about basically being right under the Empire's nose. Like it was either Cassian or Luthen himself. Someone mentioned that in the first season. Like it was a very similar line as well. So I thought that was a good little kind of callback to the first season too.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly right. You think that even like I was theorizing that maybe even one of the rebel characters would get revenge on Luthen for like all the pain that he had caused Val and some other characters. Yep. They might have a motivation to actually kill the guy. So then when you see him dropping the bloody knife, it's like, oh my gosh, there goes another unpredictable thing that works so well because it doesn't go the way you think, and you're just like, oh man, but he's not dead yet. And then like again, like right, Ben, you wanted to see like the spy thriller stuff for a long time, and man, oh man, the last 6 episodes we got it, because that what was it? It was an episode. Was it episode 10 or episode 12, whatever, with Clea going to the hospital, going undercover, just using.
It was right at the end of 10, maybe.
Okay, yeah, just getting getting the different gadgets to like break in and get the different clothes. Like that was such a well done sequence, Milton. That just it really just showed you like, oh man, the importance. Like she's got to go in there full of ISB troopers, and she was doing so well. I thought that she was 3 different operatives. Like that's how well she's been working in this system, man.
Right, and that just shows. That's why I think the flashbacks were really helpful because that strengthened those scenes. I think it showed how she was trained over the years. It showed how Luthen really took to her and how she paid attention. And you saw how he was saying, "Listen, you have to pay attention. You have to see it all." And you clearly see that she was like trusted and she was like in this game for a while. And I appreciated it. And I loved how they showed her ruthlessness, but most importantly, how vulnerable she was, knowing that she had to let Luthen go for the best reason and for the overall good of the rebellion.
I completely agree with you on that. I think that was a nice touch with her character, like getting to see, because without the flashbacks, maybe you don't understand their connection nearly as much. So I really do appreciate that, and I think one of the like kind of the underrated parts of the entire sequence, like her with the hospital, is the point of view from the Imperial officer who's watching over like the security cams and stuff. Because like you mentioned, Chris, that's kind of like the spy stuff I've been waiting for. Like that sort of like I could picture that being kind of like in a James Bond movie of like a villain overlooking a camera, like being like, all right, where's he at? Like, and like scanning the crowds of people or whatever. Like that whole thing. Like I really appreciated them putting that in there because it fits for the genre. And like, I just think her character had a really good payoff, just through this whole arc and where she ended up at the end of it.
Yeah, I do got to give credit where credit is due because this blew my mind when I found this out earlier in the week. So, the actress that plays Clea Markey is Elizabeth Dulau. This is her first on-screen project. Like she's pretty much out of drama school, and this is her first actual project. Because I looked her up a couple weeks ago because I was fascinated by this character. I wanted to like know the backstory of the actor. And there was like nothing on IMDb. I'm like looking like, is this a glitch? Like what's going on? Nope. This is our first actual like credited like actual acting gig. Like,
nice.
What in the
That's
world?
Crazy. I did not know that. That's very impressive, actually.
Yeah. Star Wars always does really well, right? With getting these unknown actors, like Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and then they become big stars. So, hey, I hope she has a career not only in Star Wars, but everything else going forward for her. So good fortune there. Staying with the flashback, we could talk a whole hour with these darn flashbacks. I'll talk one last moment. I'm watching the one flashback. I think it might have been the last one. And I'm like, oh, this place looks familiar. Like, no way, are they on Naboo? This is crazy. Are they actually on Naboo right now? Turns out they were on Naboo. And it makes a lot of sense because, hey, this is the Emperor's homeworld. So, Luthen's trying to make a mark. But I love, like, again, how he's teaching her. He's like, don't look right away, because if you look right away, people are going to be suspicious. Like, you knew what was happening. So wait a couple seconds and then look over and see what the button that I pressed was all about. And it's like, oh man, they're making a mark on Palpatine's homeworld. Like we're not going to stand for his BS anymore. So I love that idea of like rebellion on Naboo and just teaching moment there.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I think that scene in particular, again, stood out for me when it comes to Clea's development. And seeing the relationship that they had and how it all looks moving forward throughout the show. I think it's 100% was needed. It wasn't something that was extra just because. It made sense for the story purposes.
Mm-hmm. Pendergast. Oh my gosh. Like this ISB guy that, he seemed like so in control this entire time. His downfall is I'm not going to go out in a jail cell. I'm gonna off myself. I was like, but the way they portrayed that in the show is pretty brutal. Like You don't have to see anything. It's implied, and you can hear it. It's not really implied. It's done. But just the way they show, I forget the Imperial's like guy that walks out the door, and he's just looking at the stormtroopers, and like you hear the blaster, and then he like holds his hand because like the stormtroopers are about to go in, and it just like takes a moment to just like look at his reaction of like, oh wow, like the complete ISB is just like shifting in power because dominoes are falling. People have to pay for what is happening with the secrecy of this project. Somebody's head's got to roll, and well, apparently he's not going to let it because he's going to do it himself. So I was like, this is crazy. You know, this is Star Wars. This is in a Star Wars universe. But at some points, it's like, oh wow, we actually went here, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, that I like that scene too. I didn't expect it until obviously how they shot it. But what stood out to me was whenever, Pendergast does what he does to take his own life, but then the other Moff was like, hold on for a second. Like he's like kind of let him have like his moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, he knew what he was gonna do when
he knew exactly what he was gonna do.
Yeah. He knew as soon as he said, "Can you give me a moment to collect my thoughts?" He knew what the underlying message was, it kind of like that whole sequence, it worked also because we've seen that before in other mediums of military type things because if anyone's seen the movie A Few Good Men, you have an officer like he's going to be like probably getting taken to jail, etc., and he does the same thing, and it's like implied, like he gets all around and everything, gets the blaster, the weapon ready, and then it cuts, and and then they find out what happened to him, and that sort of thing fits with this, especially with the Empire, the way they are and stuff. So I really think that was was a well-rounded way to, again, like it's kind of like tying off loose ends with this show of like, all right, we can't have a lot of these high-ranking Moffs and people running around like days before the events of A New Hope when they're not around or whatever. So I really do like the way they handled a lot of these newer characters.
Oh yeah, another one we're gonna talk on. It just spawned on me. I'm like, you know what? I think a good episode in the future we should do is where do we want to see the surviving characters of Andor? What things could they be up to? And speaking of which, Jedha Mira on her end, right? I think everybody thought she was a goner, whether it be Darth Vader or just another person just killing her. The fact that she ends up in, I don't know if it's Narkina 5. Maybe all the prisons are like Narkina 5, the way it's like infrastructure is with the floors and all. But let's just say it's Narkina 5. It's just like the full circle, because then her parents or something were in prison or something. So for her, I bet you like the idea of being in prison is like worse than death, So it's like, wow, the idea that she's going to be there now,
Yeah. It's a good circle back around to where, she was helping create all of this stuff, helping create this chaos, this tyranny and everything. And then turns around, she's getting imprisoned by it. So like, it's a good way to end her character arc in this show.
And that's the thing with Andor is it's very much a tragedy, right? Like we've come across so many moments where these characters' lives just change in an instant, and it's not their fault necessarily. It's just unfortunate circumstances. Like I always go back to Cinta and like how good of a warrior she was, how good of a spy, like Luthen's right-hand man assassin, this big, heroic person, right? Vel's love interest, gone by a stray blaster bolt from some no-name little wannabe soldier guy. Like, and then you have Dedra Mira, like you think she could be like the next big like Grand Moff Tarkin in the future or something. No, she just ends up in prison after all this hard work she's done to unravel things. She ends up in prison. Like nothing's fair in this galaxy. So again, the human story, nobody's safe. Gotta love it.
That's a good point. It is very tragic, especially the last 6 episodes for her. She loses her man. Well, he nearly tries to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. And then she gets, treated as a traitor, and then she's in prison. It's like, damn, like nothing really worked out for her the last 2 years of what she was looking to do. She thought it was, but unfortunately it didn't work out.
So we go back to Yavin. We'll start piecing together the last part of the episode here. we go back to Yavin, and I really like how, again, full circle the story has come, pertaining to Cassian Andor and his stoicism and his like belief of him being in the actual rebellion now, and him actually standing up for Luthen Rail. Because I love this fact, or I love this detail where even in canon, like these characters like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa and all these other like high brass of the rebellion at this point are already forgotten about Luthen. It feels like they've forgotten, right? All the current lore of Star Wars, like we never hear Luthen's name. Well, mainly because he was never a character there. But I think like Lucasfilm is sort of like retroactively like putting that in there. Like Luthen is really the godfather, the forefather of the rebellion, but the other people don't want him to be that. So it takes Cassian Andor to, as a person that hated that guy, to actually be the one to all these years later stand up for him, and because of him, they trust the source of this information to actually get their butts in gear and actually destroy the Death Star. So there's a lot of things between Luthen Rail, Cassian standing up for him to actually get this intel to actually be believed by these characters. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like I said, I think it was nice to see, Cassian step up and say, listen, like, he's like, he told that one senator, the one black lady, he's like, did you know him? And she's like, no. And then he looks at Mon, he's like, but you knew him. And it's like, yeah, like he's been very credible throughout the series. Yes, he's a little crazy like Saw Gerrera, but Luthen had his way of doing things. However, he was right. Like he knew they had to do it like this, unfortunately. And it turned out to be the best thing that needed to happen to the galaxy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thoughts on this, Ben? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I really liked that whole council scene. I thought it was really well done. Cassian like making his case for him and everything. And I just I think they've done a good job of not retconning, but kind of like retconning the reasons why these characters don't reference them in the original movies.
Yep.
And like, it's something like like Lucas did with the Clone Wars to the prequels. Like, you kind of like fit stories in that put pieces in place that weren't really there or whatever, or weren't really referenced. So, it's good. It's kind of like what they're doing even with the Mandoverse over to the sequel trilogy. Like, they're doing it in a clever way, and like they did it in a good way with this series, like explaining why, he isn't referenced in the OT, and I thought it was done really well. And again, all the actors I think they had with the whole council scene were really good during that whole sequence of that. And then the look, I just gotta say, like the whole Yavin base, I love seeing inside of it, because in the original movie we only see a little bit inside of it and outside of it, and this one we see a bit more, which is nice. And because that base has always been one of the more interesting Star Wars locations, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, and the idea that we're ever closer to Rogue One, we're seeing the Pathfinders changing, like they're charging through, they're doing their training. We even see Pal, the alien, running with them. There's just all these little things, and just staying with that, like just the last thing of like the connective tissue. Tivik is mentioned multiple times. We got this contact, one of Saul guys. He's on Caffrine. We got to get there. It's like, oh my gosh, this is literally like an hour or two before Rogue One. I absolutely love that. And again, that sense of urgency of like, all right, we got this information, and now we have this other information coming through that's also from Jedha, because there's somebody mentioned Jedha with Clea, so mentioned Jedha, Kyber, Erso. These things are all colliding at once. This is a flashpoint. We got to deal with this now. So, Bill, and like, what did you think of that whole thing with all the connective things right at the end there?
It made sense to me. Like it felt perfect. Like I'm not even joking. Every time when I heard like Erso, Kyber, and all that, I'm thinking, okay, how are they going to tie this in? Like, right, don't mess it up. And they didn't give you all the information. They just said phrases, and I that because they could have easily said Death Star, and I'm like, no one knew what it was. Everyone thought it was Stardust is the code name that we first hear. in Rogue One. And obviously, like, it's nice that they didn't say Death Star except for like their Empire, obviously. But then for them to say, hey, we still have to piece this together. These are what they're doing. It's a super weapon. We just don't know what it is yet. So we have to find the right pieces by using the clues that we were given to get all the information together. And I loved it. They didn't make it easy for the rebellion. They organically made it work for what it was going to turn into Rogue One.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and Ben, did you get a chance to watch Rogue One yet?
Not yet. I was gonna do that
Okay.
probably tonight, since I'm not watching Last of Us anymore. That's what the plan was tonight. I was gonna
Okay.
just hang out, watch that, and I honestly was probably gonna what I'm gonna do. What I was planning is I was actually planning on just fast forwarding to like the final 10 minutes of the final episode of
Yep.
Andor, and just watching that, and then putting on Rogue One afterwards, just because, like you said, I liked the urgency of it, like the build up, because it's like, oh my gosh, we're budding right up. It's kind of like the Vader thing in the
Yep.
end of Rogue One into A New Hope. It kind of like rolls right over perfectly. And one other little thing too, I want to give a shout to is, when we're talking about this connectivity to Rogue One, Krennic also mentions when he's talking to Dedra, he talks about Galen Erso being on Edo base and stuff, and like, I thought that was a good little shout as well, that they, to really hammer home that connectivity between these two movies.
Oh yeah. I to just spend a moment here watching Rogue One. Honestly, if you want to look at it this way, dude, it's literally like Andor season 2 episode 13, 14, and 15. That's how in my eyes I look at it now. Because that's how connected the story feels. It's unbelievable when you see him walking on Kefrine, then going back to Yavin 4. They're bringing back Jyn Erso. She's connected. She's going there for a reason. And then you look back in the past, and Ben, you're always talking about Cassian. He's got to be a spy. We got to see him on missions. As I'm watching Rogue One, this is something I don't recommend for people to do, but I stopped the movie multiple times. I paused the movie, and I was like thinking out loud, like, all right, Cassian was doing this over here. He was over here. He was doing it. I'm like playing like 3D chess in my head, trying to figure out like all the connections as I'm going through, trying to piece these things together. And I'm like, I can't find any fault lines. Like, they literally did this thing perfectly. It's amazing. And it feels, it's kind of weird, and I get it because people online are talking about this. Disney Plus updated like the header image for Rogue One, and actually has Cassian as like the front image of Rogue One. But in a weird way, I kind of look at him as the main character of it now. As the same way I just said it's episode 13, 14, 15, because of his role in Andor, and then the way he is like the mission leader. I actually see him as the main character, not to take away from Felicity Jones' Jyn Erso now, but I look at Rogue One as a Cassian Andor story, and it's just because of how much homework Tony Gilroy and the team did to coordinate these things to literally fit perfectly together. So I don't know if that's how you felt, Milton.
You're right. He's now viewed as the main character. It's not a. I mean, after watching the last 6 episodes of this series and how it bleeds into Rogue One, there's no other way, And I think because when you first watch Rogue One, it's very much an ensemble type movie. Yes, they really highlight Jyn Erso. However, now that we have this series, I think somehow it organically turned into Cassian's like journey being completed. Because I thought, who I thought about the whole time by the last 30 minutes of the show? Bix.
Yep.
When I watched Rogue One, because it's like, man, like Bix has no idea that her baby dad is going to be sacrificing himself to progress the rebellion, and it's like, man, like we now know this character has like a legacy out there he just don't know about.
Yeah. Oh man, I know, Ben, you were talking off air that you said you loved how Andor ended. Was that because of that last scene with Bix?
Yeah, because I thought, because I just feel like with Star Wars too many times they like will leave things super open ended and then never come back to it ever. So it's good that they addressed and kind of closed off to a degree. You know, we know her character survives with the kid, and we know it's obviously Cassian's. So like, it's a good ending, and I really think it was a good payoff just because, you know, the thing is with Star Wars, you know, there's always like hope in Star Wars. Like, you know, even in like at the end of Rogue One, I mean, you got, even though Vader just slaughtered all those people, you know, Leia does her whole hope thing, and all this, or, you know, you have all these different things. Even in Revenge of the Sith, that movie's so dark and it ends hopeful. So like, you have those moments, and I feel like with all the like stuff that happened with our heroes and main people for this show, you know, ending it with, even though we know where Cassian's going to get like pretty much his final few days of existence, you know, still ending it on like a hopeful note with Bix having his kid. I thought it was really, really well done, and you know, I feel like that could lead into potential extended things, you know, whether it be like books, comics, or if they do some other live action series later down the timeline and she pops up and like, I don't know, she finds out like Cassian was a big part of this whole Scarif Death Star thing and all this. Like, you know, I'd be willing to bet down the line there's going to be something in canon, Chris, you know, where they address where she finds out Cassian was a hero for the rebellion.
Yeah, looking at the character of Bix, I absolutely love this scene. I feel like, you know, she doesn't have to be part of the rebellion and a soldier to really get her, you know, what's due for her from all the trauma she's dealt with and all that. It's just nice to see her at peace. You know, they're in the planes with good old B2EMO. I was wondering about that poor droid. You know, they just left the poor droid there. It's like, no, I like that droid, but we get to see him there with Bix, and it just, yeah, everything she's been through. It's just nice to see, like you said, a happy ending. A happy ending, although it is somber when you realize that Cassian will never meet his son. So that's the downside, Milton.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like, I didn't expect that, because at first I was thinking like, nah, why would they do that? But then it's like, no, I'm cool with it. It works for the character. It works for the show. So yes, because I mean, it's kind of nice because you can expand off of the character if you really wanted to later down the road.
Yeah. Well, as difficult it is to do this with, you know, with a quick little conclusion at the end here, let's give our thoughts for the last 3 episodes, as well as the season, as well as the series. We're gonna give 3 scores because why the heck not? I'll start this one off though. So I'll go ahead and say that these last 3 episodes, I wasn't as, and I'm going to try to put this in a way, I didn't like them as much as the last 3 episodes, only because these were like a 9.5 and those were like a 10 out of 10. I'll take the 0.5 points off for being slightly confused about Luthen's flashbacks, but it's probably just me not interpreting them efficiently, whatever. But everything with the connections to Rogue One, amazing. These 3 episodes make me never look at Rogue One the same. And as Milton said before, my favorite of the new Star Wars films. I already loved it enough. Didn't think it would get better, but it certainly has gotten better, as evidence of me watching it last night. So absolutely incredible stuff there. So I give the season, or the last 3 episodes, sorry, arc 4, I guess you call it, a 9.5 out of 10. I'm going to give season 2 a 9 out of 10. Yeah, I'll give season 2 a 9 out of 10. I think the things that me and Ben had agreed on with, yeah, we'd like to see Andor versus season 1 in a more Rebel spy specific thing. I loved seeing Andor in all these different missions. We get to see him first as a pilot of a test pilot in an Imperial Sinar facility doing that. We get to see him as a actual Rebel spy integrated into Gorman. We then get to see him being like an assassin sniper trying to kill Dedra, going back to Gorman again. We get to see him then try to rescue, or successfully does rescue Mon Mothma, and then we get to see him go back to Coruscant again in order to get Clay out of there safe. So in my eyes, Cassian is the ultimate hero of the rebellion. Like, this guy has done the most insane missions ever. Season 2 was an absolute blast. You know what? I'm giving season 2 a 9.5 out of 10. And then series as a whole, yeah, again, this is hard to do in like 20 seconds, but we're gonna talk about this for forever, basically, as Star Wars fans. At least for me, I pride Andor as the best Star Wars series I've watched to date. Giving it a 9.5 as well, just because nothing's really perfect. Those 3 episodes in Arc 3 were perfect in my eyes, but the series as a whole, I really dug it. This was the kind of Star Wars I expected from Disney when they announced Disney Plus as a service. I want to get that cool like HBO drama. It's a little bit slower, maybe like Game of Thrones, with some hard-hitting content that is both relative, but also when we're dealing with the Empire and the Rebellion, we're using a certain kind of tone. We're not dealing with mysticism of the Force per se, but we're dealing with the boots on the ground, the politics, the spy antics. So I think what Tony Gilroy and the team did with that couldn't make it any better. And again, the best thing I could say about Andor is it changes my entire outlook on Star Wars, especially the original trilogy. So that being said, 9.5 out of 10. I'm going to go over to Milton with this one. So, thoughts on the last 3 episodes, thoughts on Andor Season 2, and thoughts on the series. I hate that we have to do it like this, but this is what we're doing.
Yeah, I might need you to, remind me of which ones we're scoring, by the way, because that's a lot. So the last 3 episodes, I really enjoyed them. I said last week was really, really good. I stand by this week's as the best of the 3. I think I said that in the group chat the other day. It felt like Star Wars, and that's not me throwing shade. I thought this actual season felt like a Star Wars show that was really, really good from 1 till 12. I felt that these last 3 episodes strengthened Rogue One, strengthened Cassian's character, made the rebellion look even more like credible. You got to see more in depth of the Empire and how manipulative they can be within each other. I felt this whole entire arc strengthened every character and paid off every character that they were trying to pay off. So I would score this a 10 out of 10 for these last 3 episodes because it led into Rogue One perfectly, in my opinion. From the beginning of episode, 10 to the end of episode 12, I was invested. Mm-hmm. Eyes were glued to the TV. Never was bored. Thought it was perfect. Great storytelling. Overall, as season 2 as a whole, I think it was a great season. Honestly, I think it was better than season 1 in my opinion. I thought season 1 was fine, but season 2 was the most consistent. I think of the 2, we got to see a lot more world building, whether it's with the Rebellion Empire. So I felt very good with where they took it. So overall, I was very satisfied with season 2. And then what was the last question?
Just the series as a whole, like season 1 and 2, impact on Star Wars, just general thoughts of Andor.
This is going to be blasphemy for some people, but this is probably the second best season, second best show when it comes to Star Wars since Mandalorian's been, going on. So Andor and Mandalorian are the only good, consistent Star Wars show-wise that we've gotten. And that's me being objective. That's me seeing the entire picture of it. That's me understanding what they were trying to do. Was it perfect all the time? Absolutely not. But it was consistent for what they were trying to do. And you can definitely tell they put the effort in to want to make this show the best thing that they can make it.
Yep, couldn't agree more. So a 10 out of 10 from the last 3 episodes. The season as a whole. So I forgot the number you gave. I'm trying to just say these out loud.
I didn't give a number. So for season as a whole, to me, it was a 9 out of 10.
All right. And if you could give Andor itself, the whole season 1 and 2, a score.
I would say the entire series, probably a good 8.75. I felt season 1 had some weak points that didn't really work. I felt it was a slow burn, but I think season 2 made up for that. So I think a good 8.75.
Oh, yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Very high marks from Will. Throw it over to Ben. Episode, season, and series.
Those are some great thoughts on it, and I definitely get your guys' points. I think for me, these final 3 episodes, for sure, I think they were the best of the series as a whole. just because, like you mentioned, Milton, they tie into Rogue One perfectly, and et cetera, et cetera. Like they work really well. So for me, for the final three, I would have to say they're a 9. That's, I think, my highest rated score for the entire series of
It
any
is,
of the
yeah.
episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'll say that's a 9 for the final three. For season 2 of Andor, I think it has a lot of downs. For me, like if I had to say on a sports scale, like a scoring a record, I would say like this season is like a 7-5 season, like a barely winning season. Like, you got the final 6, and then the first episode were good. So for me, it's kind of like I would say, yeah, I'd say this season probably is a very solid, very solid 8. I would say. If you drop out a bunch of the slow, unnecessary things, and then the series as a whole, this is where I have to go like full Saw Gerrera chaos mode on the rating scale because I think for me, just to keep it 100% real, as we always do on this show. So that's the whole thing. I think for me, Andor season 1, it's pretty much unwatchable. I think it's a Star Wars skin slapped on a serious show, and I just don't think it feels like Star Wars. I just don't. And even if you take away the feeling side of it, that subjective side of it, I think another subjective thing for me that's really big. I just think the pacing is absolutely terrible for the first season. So I throw the first season completely out the window. And then the second season, like I said, it has some good moments. Still has some pacing issues in several of the episodes. So for me, just because of the weight of the first season, for me being pretty much like an 0-12 type deal, I think as a whole, this season probably is the worst for me out of any Star Wars show. I think I gave Acolyte a 6.5, so I would probably give this series as a whole a 6. But if I drop out the first season and only count the second season, like I said, I'd say it's an 8. So. Yeah.
All right. So there you go. We got like a 6. We got a 8.75. I give it a 9.5. I think I just gave it 9.5s across the board, even if that doesn't make sense. That's what I'm thinking, guys. But there you go. The thing is, this is kind of it for new Star Wars. I mean, we got The Mandalorian and Grogu, which is still over a year away. Now, I fully expect Maul Shadow Lord to hopefully be out before then. It is animation. Maybe they'll just surprise us and give us like the Bad Batch, like drop it on New Year's Day, that January 1st or 2nd slot, get the year started off right. But up until then, we got a lot of Star Wars coverage that we haven't even talked about on the channel. We have news stories for weeks to talk about on this channel. Like, there was an entire convention out there in Japan that we'd even talk about yet. We have an entire series that we didn't even talk about called Tales of the Underworld, and that's where we're going to go first. So everybody wondering what we're talking about next week, we're going to be talking about just the first 3 shorts of Tales of the Underworld, First Size Ventress. We're going to deep dive into those 3 episodes, and then we'll finish the next week with the Cad Bane episodes. We'll talk about some light and magic on the horizon. We'll talk about some of the big news stories out of Celebration, and maybe while this is all happening, we might get big news, I'm sure, as well. So, it's video game season coming up, so maybe they'll drop like not that I have any insider information, but, they announce a lot of things in June. Maybe we'll get a new Star Wars game revealed as well, even though we haven't even talked about the one that got revealed at Celebration. I'm just staying hopeful. But anyway, guys, we're not going anywhere anytime soon. Even the Star Wars stuff is kind of slowed down. We have a lot of stuff to talk about still, so buckle up, because it's going to be a good half of the year here going into the summer months for Outer Rim Transmission. So that's a little preview of things to come, but I'll throw it over to Milton. Where can the people find you in the meantime if they want to follow your stuff online?
Yeah, they can find me on Twitter at MiltonWeber7 or Instagram at Milton7Weber. Hit me up on both social medias. I like to talk sports, Star Wars, and a little bit of life if it's cool. Right now, just in the process of, preparing to get married in less than, a month and a half, not even. So, yeah, man, just looking forward to the summer upcoming, looking forward to rewatching some old Star Wars, but also some new Star Wars that I haven't seen yet that's currently on the Disney Plus. So hit me up. We'll have a good conversation. Appreciate you guys watching and listening.
All right. Keep it real. Awesome. And throwing it over to Ben.
Yeah, I can echo all of those same sentiments. Just find me talking Star Wars fitness and everything else in between, really. And actually getting excited about the Superman movie. That's looking pretty nice. So you can find all of that at Real Ben Maynard on X or Instagram.
Yeah, the movie season's absolutely nuts this year. I know I'm going off topic at the end here, but so far this year, in the last month, I've seen the Thunderbolts, which I really liked. I've seen Sinners, which I really, really liked. This week, for the first time, go with a coworker that's a huge fan, apparently, of Final Destination. I've never seen a single one, but I'm like, he asked me to go with him after work one day, so I'm like, yeah, why the heck not? So I got that to see. Then I got Lilo and Stitch to see, which is coming out next week as well. Then it's Superman. Then it's Jurassic World. Then it's Fantastic Four. Then it's 28 years later. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so many movies coming out. So I don't know. Maybe I'll throw movie talk into one of these slower episodes if we have it. I don't know. But yeah, you can always check out my Twitter for all that information if you want those up to minute details of what I think about certain things. And I don't put them on YouTube. Usually I'm tweeting about them over on X/Twitter at StarRaptor. I didn't even do the plugs properly at the beginning of the show to let you guys know that we are a podcast that can be downloaded for audio devices, audio services such as Spotify, such as Google Play. No, Google Play does not exist anymore. Why is that in my head? We're talking about Apple. We're talking about Spotify, even Amazon Music and whatever other podcatchers you use. We're on there.
Just the Alexa device even does it too.
Oh, yeah. See, look at that. We're even on those things. So just search Outer Rim Transmission. And once again, we go live every Sunday here on youtube.com/StarRaptor. If you want to be involved with the chat, such as Skywalker's Academy was tonight, go ahead, chime in. We'll give you guys shout out from time to time over there. But this was Outer Rim Transmissions 196. We're just another 3 episodes away from episode 200. So getting closer to that awesome goal there. But until next time, for Milton, for Ben, for I, Chris, aka StarRaptor, that's going to do it for Outer Rim Transmission 196. We hope you guys enjoyed it and hope you guys enjoyed Andor. We'll see you next time. May the Force be with you always. End transmission.